Welcome to the Nobody Asked podcast, where once a week, Sam dives deep into the emotional roller coaster that comes with being in your 20s. Get ready to discuss relatable struggles and hear her perspective on relevant topics that, seriously, nobody asked for.
Hey bitches! Welcome back to the Nobody Asked podcast. I'm your host Sam, and this is our first video episode. So ignore me if I'm like looking around a lot. The lens is here, but the viewfinder is a little bit to the side, and then like my notes are down here, and then the mic's low, so it's gonna be a journey. But and also bear with me with the editing of this, because I do think it's gonna be a lot to figure out. But I did used to make YouTube videos, so I think that I'm gonna be okay because I've edited them before, but we'll see. This is the first time you'll see like how I talk, and I move my hands a lot, so I'm gonna try not to because it's really annoying and I don't want to hit the whole setup. But yeah, so I don't think every video episode is gonna be like, I don't think every episode going forward is gonna be a video, but I do think I'm gonna do it on like most of them, and definitely on really good episodes. Like I think this one's gonna be a good one and like important, and I want to be able to make a lot of like clips of it to post on like the Instagram and TikTok. So if you don't follow us there. I will, if you're watching the YouTube version, I will put the names right here with the social media accounts, and if not, you can check the description if you're listening to this. And let me know if you are on the YouTube version or if you're on the audio version, which one you prefer, so that I know going forward what you guys like. But I'm just gonna get into the episode because I don't want to do a whole long intro. I didn't do an episode last week because I was trying to do a video version of this episode and it did not go well. And I will not lie to you, I was so mad at myself all of the week, not getting it up. I was just frustrated. But I have to keep remembering that I'm still a human being, and this is still the first few months that I started this, and I don't have it all figured out yet. And that's okay. But we did figure it out for today, so hopefully we won't have any more issues. This was kind of the last like technical thing I needed to figure out. So I think it should be fine for the rest of the episodes. But yeah, okay, let's just get into it. This is going to be a Listen to Your Body series episode. If you didn't listen to last week's, I am kind of bouncing back and forth between my 20-something series and my Listen to Your Body series. And this week, we're listening to our bodies, and we're going to talk about mental health, and then more importantly, or like more specifically, ADHD, because I think I mentioned this before in episodes, but I recently got diagnosed with ADHD as an adult. So I have a lot of thoughts about it, and I started the process in September and started medication in October, like right before Halloween. So I definitely waited a while to film this episode because I wanted to kind of see my experience on the medication and like give myself time to adjust before I like got on and talked about it. So yeah, I think it's been long enough. Obviously, I'm gonna have a lot more changes and like I feel like I notice something every week that is greatly improved from being medicated now. But like, obviously I noticed the day-to-day things like very quickly, but like there's just things that like I don't do every day. So when I finally do it for the first time, I'm like, oh my God, why was that so easy? And then I'm like, oh my God, this is the first time I've done that since I got put on medication. And I think it's just gonna be like for the next year, like ever flowing process, but that's okay. I'm excited still, and I'm sure I'm gonna make a lot more episodes about ADHD and even just mental health in general, and more updates, because I am on 10 milligrams of Adderall, and I'm being switched to 15 starting sometime like next week. I'm just waiting for them to fill the prescription. So I'm sure that I'll probably have more to say after I go up a dose, but I just kind of wanted to do this one, like this episode, to talk about like what I've experienced so far on the lowest dose, And then we can always check back in like 2 months and see where I'm at and see if they went up again or if I stayed there or how I feel. So yeah, let's just get into it. Basically, I'm just going to do the backstory first. I've always been very like artsy, like, I don't know if it's left brain or right brain, but you know what I'm talking about. Like, I've always been like the creative focus, and I've never really been like book smart, if that makes sense. So I feel like it was never like a far jump for my parents to just assume that I was probably just like artsy, creative, like free-spirited, because I think I still am all of those things. But I also think that made it easier for them to not really look into if there was a deeper problem when I was struggling with like math and reading and like stuff like spelling, like stuff like that. And I know just like doing research and like listening to other people's experiences, I know that's something a lot of people say they had a similar experience with. I think it's a lot easier to diagnose in somebody that is smart but just has a hard time being like focused. And like, I'm not saying I'm not smart, but I am much more creative and like creative problem solving, and like that's just who I am. So I think it made a lot of sense. They probably just assumed I was just not like STEM smart, like science, math, like that stuff. So I've always kind of thought that I had an issue, like not as a child, obviously, because I don't think anybody thinks about that as a child. But like once I got to high school, I never could relate to like I couldn't study, like I barely got through it. And then I feel like because I was in high school having like such a hard time and like getting yelled at all the time for my grades, and like I get it that like I know so many people have this experience that when you're not diagnosed as a kid, people just think you're being lazy or you're a hot mess or you're not, like, you don't care, you're not focused. But I think I had such a hard time because I was constantly like arguing with my parents, like not doing great, like fantastic in school, like in high school and grade school. And they always had the assumption that I just didn't care and I was unmotivated and like lazy, and that's why everything was always a mess. But I think that's super common, and like I'm not mad at them. I have like no hard feelings. I don't know how I would have dealt with that. I don't have kids, so definitely like nothing bad to say about them. But I do think once I got older and could kind of like understand what I was feeling, I was having such a hard time because they were constantly like, you need to try harder, like you need to be more focused. And I knew that I wanted to be, like I was trying as hard as I could, but like I just like couldn't get everything to connect in my brain. And it kind of just left me in a place where I feel like I just like always felt like something was wrong with me, and like I wasn't smart enough or I wasn't good enough for stuff. And I think that's a really hard place to be at like such an already hard age. Like high school is already such an emotional roller coaster age. Your like body's changing, your hormones are changing, and like you're starting to like boys, and like, or you're starting to like anybody really. And I just think in general it was already a lot. So I think I have a lot of like, not trauma, but like complicated past things from that experience. And then I feel like when I went to college, I was so focused on never coming off as like lazy or like I couldn't do anything or like something was wrong with me. So I feel like when I went to college, I like massively overloaded my plate so that like even if I wasn't getting stuff done, it was like, oh, she's not getting stuff done because she's so busy, she has so much going on. So like it almost gave me an excuse to be a hot mess, which isn't like healthy, because I didn't feel like good about it. Like, you know what I mean? I still knew that I wasn't getting things done, even if from the outside it looked like I was being so productive because I am involved in all these things and I have all this stuff going on. But like, it doesn't even matter that it looked like I was being productive because I know that I wasn't. But I just overloaded myself so that it made sense for me to be like kind of chaotic and like a hot mess. And then I feel like once I got treated, I'm realizing that like I am still a little bit of a chaotic person, because I think all creative people are. But like I am not even nearly as chaotic as I thought I was. now that I finally feel like I'm like being treated the way that I should be. But yeah, so I didn't realize until I got treatment that so much of your like self-esteem, mental health, self-worth comes from like how damaged it can be from untreated ADHD, especially like if you're an adult and you've lived like 20 years like this. Because like I'm 24, so I've been functioning like this, like at half capacity, like in overdrive basically this whole time. So yeah, let me just go back and start with like the research. So I've always kind of felt like I wasn't as productive as I should be. And like I said, I've always like known deep down that like I was kind of just like faking it. So I think once I realized and like came to terms with the fact that I was absolutely faking it, I kind of knew something was wrong, but I wasn't like hell-bent on figuring it out either. And then the pandemic started. And I really feel like, because since the world slowed down, I like thought, okay, if nothing's wrong with me and it's just like the chaos of all the stuff that I'm involved in and like everything going on, the world slowing down should slow my brain down, but it didn't. And I had all the time in the world to do all these things and I still wasn't being as productive as I should be, even though I had so much extra time to do that. And I think that's kind of like the beginning of when I realized there was probably a real problem. But like obviously we were in a pandemic. I was in college still, I was barely working. So doing anything about it really didn't seem like an option. So I kind of just like thought about it like here and there for the next like year or next 2 years while I was in school and like after I graduated. And then I got my like big kid job and I started doing like a lot of research a few weeks after I started my job, because I started to realize that I think I was the chaos, if that makes sense. Like not on purpose, but like my brain was the chaos. Because I was like, oh, I'm in college. College is chaotic. Moving back and forth is chaotic. Like having to go home on the weekends, like working. I just had so much going on. I had a small business in college that I still have now. And I was like, I'm just doing too much. Then I started my job and like really like that was my main focus. And I still always felt so like overwhelmed and like drained at the end of the day. And I think I could never relate to people my age that like would go do stuff after work or like want to hang out with their friends still after work. And I could never relate to anybody because I was like literally emotionally and physically drained by the time I got home from work. And that's not normal. And I didn't realize how unnormal that was. But I think it's because from what I've like gathered from research, basically something that would take like somebody that doesn't have ADHD, it would take them, let's say, 20% of mental effort to do whatever it is. It was taking me like 50 to 60% to do each and every task I was doing, because I was never doing it in the most productive or efficient way or in a way that like benefited me at all. So I think that's kind of what started the research process, which I definitely stayed in the research denial process for far too long. And now that I have been treated for it, I really regret not like making that change sooner. But so I did research and started to really realize from other people's experiences and like other people explaining like what they thought was just like a weird like quirky part of their personality was something that I was also experiencing. And then at the end of the video they're like, okay, well then you might have undiagnosed ADHD. And I was like, okay, obviously TikTok's not medical advice, but there is something to be said about so many people having the same experience and like making you feel understood. And the only thing that kept me, I think, from like fully deciding to seek treatment and like a diagnosis was that I felt like everybody was always telling me that I'm like overachieving, I'm like motivated, like I always have so much going on, I'm always on my computer, I'm always working, I'm always doing something. And I'm like, I think I am productive, like I'm motivated, but you can be motivated and not be productive. And I think that was what I didn't realize until after getting treated. Like, I'm still who I am, and I still am a motivated person with or without Adderall. but I was never reaching my full potential. I had all these ideas, but I could never get them down to really like figure them out and do it the right way. And I think that's like the thing that took me the longest to get over, was I was just kept being like, I'm motivated, like I have all these goals and plans and things I want to do, which is fine, but I wasn't doing them in an efficient way, and I wasn't getting any of these big plans and things done because I couldn't do it the right way. But I think that's what kept me from getting diagnosed and like going through the process for so long. So I'm happy I did it, but I wish that I could have done it sooner, to be honest. But also, I guess I wouldn't go back because this is still like my journey with it. But I felt like I was just like always struggling to understand like why I'm motivated but also could have ADHD. And that goes with what I said about like a big thing I did research about was that people overcompensate like later in life because they don't ever want to feel like lazy or worthless or like they're not good for anything. So you end up overcompensating and like filling your plate, but you're like not really getting anything done, but it looks like it from the outside, so people can never say that to you again. And once I found that like research and like those people's experiences and saw that that's like a common thing for a lot of people, then I was like, no, I have it. Like that was the only thing holding me back. I was like, I need to figure this out. I need to call my doctor. I need to do whatever I have to do. And it was weird because even doing the research, it was like the first time I kind of felt like normal and accepted for the first time. And like the way that my brain works finally made sense to other people because it's how their brain worked. And that was like the most like freeing feeling I've ever experienced. So I think that also kind of led me to really want to figure out what was going on, because I finally felt like it made sense why I am the way that I am. And then I was seeing all of these people have such good experiences once getting treated. So that's definitely a big reason that I think I ended up doing it. But like there was just so many things that I don't even think people realize are untreated ADHD. And like I didn't realize so many of my like quirks were untreated ADHD, because I just thought that's who I was. And then I was also like a little bit afraid that going on medication would change like my creativity and like who I am and like the quirkiness of my personality. But it really didn't. I think it just enhanced it, to be honest, because now I finally it finally makes sense. But I think it just enhanced it because I honestly think now I'm just able to be who I am without like all of the things that were kind of socially giving me a hard time, which I'll talk about in a second. But like, okay, things I didn't realize were actually my ADHD that I thought were like quirks was like hyper-focusing. I know that that's something people talk about a lot, but I really didn't do that much research until like this year. But I just kind of thought like if I liked something, obviously I would focus on it. But I didn't realize that like you can only I was only hyper focusing on stuff I actually wanted to do, and it was to the point that it was unhealthy, because if I was doing like an art project, I literally wouldn't be hungry the whole time I was doing it. Like I would go like hours without eating because I just forgot because I was so into what I was doing. But then like if I had to do my homework and I didn't want to do it, nothing on the planet could get me to sit there and do it. So I always thought it was weird that I like couldn't control what I was like focused on, but that makes sense because that's part of it. And then another thing I noticed, like that I never realized was ADHD, was like excessive talking and like fumbling my words. And I still do that. Like that's still like, obviously you listen to this podcast, so I'm sure you know it, but that's still something that I struggle with. But I think now I'm getting better every month of being like on medication. I've gotten so much better at like clearly discussing what I want to say and like getting my point across in less words. And I also just feel like maybe this is me getting older, but also maybe it's being treated, because I did notice it happened at the same time. But I feel like I used to say so much because I thought like everybody needed to know everything about me. And then I feel like once I got treated, I'm just like, not everybody deserves to know everything about me. And I know we talk about that a lot in other episodes, but I'm just kind of starting to finally understand, like, the less is more, comment. And I used to get so annoyed by that, and, like, I used to always feel like people thought I was too much. And, like, fuck that if they do, to be honest. Even if you think that I'm too much, treated or not treated, still fuck you. But either at the end of the day, it's not that I was too much, but, like, not everybody deserved that much knowledge, like, and that much information and access to my life and things about me. So it's not that, like, I'm too much, it's that I'm too much for you because you don't deserve to know that much about me. Because anybody that, like, I've overshared with before, like, I realized that this was something I needed to work on, and, like, before I got put on medication, anybody that I was oversharing with and, like, being too much around never felt that way if they were really, like, my actual friend. So I think that taught me a lot of lessons, like, not being treated, I guess. Because I think anybody that's given me, like, the you're too much thing, like, then you don't deserve to be in my life, to be honest. But I do get the other side of it, that, like, I shouldn't have been too much for other people, because then you just don't belong in my life. But I was saying too much and giving too much for my own health and well-being to other people. And I think that's just something I realized so much. And then another thing was, like, forgetting what I'm saying in the middle of a sentence. And I still do this, but not nearly as bad. And, like, Tony obviously that's my boyfriend, spends the most time with me out of, like, everybody. And we talk about it all the time. Like, there's such a difference in how I'm able to communicate with other people and, like, communicate what I think and feel and, like, get my thoughts out since starting treatment and, like, starting the medication. And I just didn't realize, like, how bad it was. And even when I go back and watch, like, video clips that I used to film, like, when I was trying to be a YouTuber, there was just, like, so much where I'm like, why are you pausing? Like, spit it out. What's going on? And it would take me so long to get, like, and it still does, because I think I'm just chaotic in general, but, like, not compared to how it used to be. It would take me so long to get from point A to point B in a conversation. And, like, I've noticed now since going on Adderall, like, when people take forever to get from point A to point B, I'm like, all right, let's go, move it along, what are we doing? And, like, I tried very hard to be, like, respectful about it and realize that I was like that. But I think now it just gave me, like, less of patience for, like, very long-winded things, which isn't great. But at the same time, it did give me more patience in general. I just think now that I notice when people don't get from point A to point B, I'm like, oh my god, can we get there? Which isn't great, but I'm just being honest. But then, like, the biggest thing that I've noticed a difference in, and, like, that I never realized was ADHD, was, like, always feeling overwhelmed and, like, I was drowning in life and thoughts and, like, to-do lists and all that stuff. Like, I always had good intentions of getting stuff done, but I could never actually get it done, and I just felt like I was constantly drowning in my lists. And I've noticed such a difference in that since getting put on medication. And then, like, not being able to stop my brain. I've just always thought that I was just a lot. And I've just been told that so much that, like, my brain, like, constantly running a million miles an hour. Like, I just thought that was, like, who I was. And I do think that, like, getting treatment doesn't change who you are, because I still do think I am, like, chaotic. I think I will always be a little bit, like, of a walking tornado. But I don't think that it changes who you are necessarily. I think it just changes that, like, I feel chaotic in my own body. You know what I mean? Like, I think I'm still probably chaotic from the outside. Like, other people watching me do stuff, they're probably still like, oh god. But, like, I don't feel like a hot mess anymore. And that's what matters to me, at least. But it's also, I was just telling Tony this, it's not like a end-all, fix-all kind of thing. Like, I still, at first I was definitely struggling with still having days where I didn't want to be productive and still not getting stuff done, or, like, having a bad day and being, like, emotionally, like, drained. And then I remembered, I had to remind myself I'm still a normal person. And, like, if something big happens that would make any normal person, like, be off for the day, Adderall's not fixing that for me. Like, it's just putting me back at ground zero, but, like, anybody at ground zero would still need time. Or, like, still have a bad day or still be a little off that day. So I feel like that was the hardest thing, was just, like, realizing that, like, it doesn't just magically fix everything, but, like, I started to really appreciate the small things that it really did improve. And, like, when you consider all of the small things it improves, it becomes a long list of things that are a lot better. But another thing that was just, like, I couldn't stop my brain. It was like movie credits running through my brain, but in a different language, if that makes sense. Like, I could, like, tell they were words. I knew I needed to read them, but, like, couldn't even grab them for a second to translate it. Couldn't even, like, figure out, like, I couldn't even stop the credits for a second to be like, wait, what did that say? Like, that's how it felt. Like, my thoughts were just, like, running through my brain all the time. And, like, anything could trigger my mind to just start racing. And, again, I think I'm still chaotic, so I think that still happens to me sometimes, but it's, like, in a productive way. And I'm still able to, like, stop it and be like, okay, wait, I want to write that down, or, like, remember that. Where before I was just, like, I don't even know what, like, I know I'm thinking all these things, but I couldn't even tell you what I'm thinking about because it's so much at one time. And then this was a big thing, too. Like, having no control over what I listen to or what I'm focusing on. So, like, if I'm talking to my mom, but my mom's friend is talking to Tony, I have no control over, like, or I didn't have any control over what my ear was jumping to. Like, was I listening to my mom? Was I listening to the TV? Was I listening to Tony? I don't know. And I think that was, like, a really hard one to grasp. And then things like being super impulsive, buying stuff, like, for the dopamine hit, and then, like, even emotional eating, I feel like was a huge thing that I realized. And then, like, constantly trying to get my life together and, like, figure that out. And then I also think, like, forgetting things, like, exist if I don't physically see them. Like, I feel like so many things I had to, like, keep sitting out all the time, or, like, I forgot. Like, my tarot cards. I love doing them, but unless they're physically sitting right in front of me, I would never do them. So that was a big thing. And I think the, like, number one thing that I experienced a lot was just, like, overall, like, sensory overload. Like, if I was in the car and the music was super loud and Tony was talking, like, I hate loud music. I hate super loud TV, loud radio. It all triggers me and, like, just irritates me. And then, like, my social battery even, like, getting drained so quickly. And I've noticed that since getting treated, I've been able to, like, go to the bar and, like, have fun and, like, be able to talk to people and, like, feel like I'm connecting with people, instead of, like, I don't know what you said because the music's so loud, I can't focus on you because of the music, and then I hear other people talking, and then, like, there's some girl in the bar, and, like, there's just too much for me. And that has been greatly improved since going on medication. So we love that, especially because I'm young still. And then just, like, extreme fatigue in general, because I just feel like I was always so drained at the end of the day because I was never doing anything, like, in a productive way. And another one was definitely interrupting people when they talk. And I don't mean to. Or, like, even, not even just interrupting people, but, like, trying to relate to people. I saw some girl on TikTok talking about, like, her experience after getting treated. And she was saying that, like, she always has a hard time connecting with people because when they're telling a story, like, she'll say something like, oh my god, yeah, that happened to me, and, like, this is how I handled it. And to a lot of people, it comes off like you're trying to make it about you. But I'm genuinely not trying to make it about me. I'm trying to relate to you and, like, make you feel like you're not alone because I feel alone. So, like, I feel like I'm overcompensating, trying to make sure you don't feel alone and you know that, like, it happens to other people. But it's just coming off like I'm not listening to you and, like, I don't care what you have to say. But that couldn't be further from what I'm actually feeling inside. So I could never understand why, like, everybody thought I was trying to make it about me because I wasn't. But I get why it came off that way. I was just trying to relate and, like, make you feel heard and, like, you're not alone. But it ended up actually making you feel even, like, making somebody feel even more alone and like I didn't care about them. So I think that was a hard pill to swallow, and that's something I'm trying to work on so much, like, in general and since getting treated. And then I just have a couple more things. Low self-esteem, because I didn't realize that, like, untreated ADHD will cause low self-esteem and, like, low self-worth. And I think it's complicated because I feel like so many people would tell you that I, like people that know me would never have thought that I had low self-esteem. But I have literally never felt like I fit in or belong anywhere or like anybody truly understands who I am until I figured out that I have ADHD and like started the whole journey. And I really think that that caused so many self-esteem issues. And like me and Tony were just talking about this, like even our relationship has greatly improved. Not even just from my like ADHD treatment, but in general, I think the last year I've just been like working on my self-esteem and like who I am and all of that stuff. But like it's impossible. If you hate yourself, it is so hard to love somebody else and to see yourself the way that they see you. And that is a very hard thing to deal with in a relationship. It's so hard. Because if you're telling me I look pretty every day and I'm just going, thanks. Like you can tell it comes off like I just like, why you keep talking to me, stop saying that. But I don't mean for it to come off that way. And I think it's so hard to explain to somebody that like it's not that I don't appreciate the compliment, it's just like I hate myself right now. So I even though I want to believe you and I know that you feel that way, I don't feel that way, so it's hard to believe it and like know that it's true, if that makes sense. But I just didn't realize like how much my ADHD made me hate myself until I really like sat down and like I had to do like this whole thing when I got diagnosed. It was like this big, like, I know everyone's process is different, but like the person I went to had me like answer all these questions and like really like dive into like all of these different topics that go back to like my childhood to now. And there's just so many things that were like not because I was lazy or because I hated myself or like hated life or didn't care or whatever, that were just because even though I wanted to, I couldn't do it. Like I could just never figure it out. But all of those things made me think that I was just kind of a piece of shit and like lazy and couldn't get anything done. And then now I'm just realizing that like it had nothing to do with me. It wasn't because I suck and was lazy, but like you just spend so much of your life feeling like that it takes so long to reverse that. And I still feel like we're gonna have to do another episode because I feel like I'm really still in the journey of like reversing that and like starting to realize like that I think I'm a cool person and like I think I'm productive and I think I have a lot of dreams and goals. But I think it's just hard because I think you spend so much of your life thinking you're the problem and like that you're all of these things, and then you get treated and you're realizing I was never all of those things. I just needed help and wasn't given it, which is nobody's fault, but it is a reality. My self-esteem took a massive hit because I desperately needed help and I desperately needed like a lifeline my whole life. God, why am I crying? But I just feel like I always needed that lifeline and I could never get it, and I could never like catch a breath and like get a break and feel like I was doing anything right ever. So then I feel like now, since I got treated and have been like experiencing life like on medication, it's just insane how much I thought was my fault and like was a fatal like terrible character trait that wasn't even me. So I think it's just a lot emotionally to like get over and to process. And it's also like a really lonely experience because I just feel like nobody truly ever knew the real me like my whole life now, and like they only like saw like the hot mess version of me or like the less hot mess version that I was like trying to pretend to be. But like when you feel like you have so much potential but like the things you're doing in the world are coming off like you're lazy and like you don't care, and you don't know why because you do care and you're actually trying your absolute hardest, it's impossible for that not to feel so isolating and like there's something wrong with you and like you can't do anything right, when in reality it's not even your fault. But now I just think I'm going to spend the next year or two really trying to reverse all of the things that I've thought about like myself and that people have told me about me like my entire life, because that's not who I actually am. And it's just a lot to process. But I don't know. I had so much that I maybe we'll do a part 2 to this after the new year, because I just have so much that I still want to say, but this episode's going to be so long. But I don't know. If you relate to all the things I was just saying and like you've felt like this forever, but like it doesn't, like people have been telling you you're lazy and you can't do anything right, but you know that you have good intentions and you want to do stuff right and you genuinely can't, like you just can't figure out what's going on, maybe look into it. Because I was really, really afraid that it was going to change my personality. I wouldn't be creative. I wouldn't still be like chaotic and quirky and all over the place, like in like the fun part of my personality. But I promise you, it has not changed me at all. Like, and maybe that's just my experience, but that's all I can tell you. It has only greatly improved every single part of my personality that I was worried I was going to lose. It just like brought them to life. And I don't know, I just feel like an entirely different person, but in the best way. And it has greatly helped my self-esteem and my self-worth and who I am as a person. So it might be worth looking into. And even if it's not ADHD, if it's anything and you're just afraid to go to a therapist or you're afraid to get diagnosed with something or try medication. Everyone, my grandma, for example, like said, well, what if it makes you a zombie? When I wasn't sure, like, because untreated ADHD is a big thing that causes anxiety and depression. And when I got diagnosed, she diagnosed me with high anxiety and severe depression. But she decided not to put me on a antidepressant when I started Adderall, because for a lot of people, treating your ADHD can actually help the anxiety and depression, because sometimes it causes it. And I think in my case, it was what was causing it, because I really have had very minimal issues with depression and anxiety since going on Adderall. And I know that's not everybody's case, and I was very lucky for that. But like, I wasn't sure if it was like, if when I went to talk to a therapist or a psychiatrist, if it was going to be ADHD or like depression or what. And like, my grandma was like, oh, well, you know, what if it makes you a zombie? Which is a very valid thing a lot of people are worried about. But what I said was, if it makes me a zombie for a month or two, at least I know and I can roll it out, because that's better than living the rest of my life like this. Like 1 month, 2 months, a year of trying to figure out what medication works for me, to me, is better than wasting the next 20 years of my life living my whole life at like 50% miserable inside. So maybe that was a little too honest, but that was my experience. So I really urge you to take those steps when you can to figure it out, because it was hands down the best thing I have ever done for myself in my entire life. So yeah, I think we're gonna definitely do a part 2 after the new year, but for now it is good. I'm feeling a lot better, and please message me, please, whatever you need to do. If you need to talk or you want to see if I relate to any of your experiences, if you're just trying to get another person's opinion that has gone through this, like, feel free to message me on literally any of my accounts, personal, podcast, whatever, because it feels so lonely. But you shouldn't feel that way, and I don't feel that way anymore, and I can't tell you how amazing it is to not feel like that. So I'm gonna start crying again, so I'm gonna go. But thank you for listening to this episode, and I definitely plan to do a part 2, and I just hope that if you relate to any of this, you were able to figure it out, because you shouldn't have to feel like this for the rest of your life. Okay, I'm gonna go because I'm gonna start crying. I love you guys so much, and I hope you have the best week. And I'll see you bitches next Thursday for a end of the year, beginning of next year wrap up, and then we'll be on to 2023 after that. So I'll see you bitches next Thursday. Bye.